Hi, my name is Frank Schaeffer, and I have been watching world events through the lens of someone raised in a fundamentalist cult who then left that cult and became a very different person, both individually and personally and within my family, but also in terms of my politics. But my background is very religious, and I have been out of that for some time now. And it's in that context that I watched the latest iteration of the January 6th uprising, which happened in Brazil just now, when, in exact imitation of what happened in our national capital, the followers of Bolsonaro stormed their government buildings to deny and overturn the election, again, fairly won by someone else, that they were denying. And there's no way to understand this event outside of the context of the fact that Brazil has a right-wing evangelical and Roman Catholic conservative underground, if you like, that have been his bedrock of support, an exact mirror image of what happened in America with Trump and the white evangelical vote. A friend of mine that I've interviewed on my podcast in conversation with Frank Schaeffer, Jared Yates Sexton, commented this morning, and I'm going to quote, "Can we please move past this absurd and ridiculous notion that this isn't an international authoritarian movement following the same playbook toward the same ends and funded by and organized by the same people," end quote. And what Jared is talking about is a global phenomenon that is a move toward authoritarianism away from democracy. But it has two elements, and that is that there are business interests in corporate America and indeed corporations all over the world that have an interest in pushing for authoritarian rulers that they in turn have influence with. They're not interested in democracy. These are the big corporations that don't pay taxes, the transnationalists that basically look at the whole globe as a market rather than a series of nations. And that's who he's talking about. But there's another part of this, and that is, I think it needs to be understood that this wave of global authoritarianism is being done in the name of God, not necessarily by sincere believers, but by very cynical actors, whether that is the Orthodox Jews seizing big chunks of the West Bank in the name of their own version of orthodoxy, or the Russian Orthodox Church, a very different kind of orthodoxy, where Archbishop Kirill is literally, figuratively in bed with Vladimir Putin, blessing his war and genocide against the Ukrainian people, or the Saudi royals, when they're not busy dismembering a journalist here and there, oppressing women, their excuse being that their religion demands it. Democracy is under threat from cynical and abusive people globally, and their real intent is twofold: theocracy, replacing any democracy with this idea of godly power administered always by people who want to be in power themselves, like the mullahs of Iran, who are executing demonstrators, persecuting women in the name of Islamic religion. And meanwhile, in our own country, in the United States, a lot of our media pretend that somehow these revolutions against democracy have other sources than religion. But they do, because of corporate interests, etc., and authoritarian leaders. But none of them are possible without the backing of religious believers, some of whom are really authentic religious believers, others pretending to be, using religion as a power base. So whether it is the Hindu nationalist movement in India, led by Modi, the prime minister, or the Christian nationalists here in the United States, or the Saudi royals, or the Iranian mullahs, or the Orthodox Jews that are in the government now of Israel as it tilts to the far right, or whether it is the people in the United States who are persecuting women in the name of religious absolutes, like Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court and this Roman Catholic majority now on the Supreme Court. Wherever you touch it, it's the same. So it is not a coincidence that this uprising against the duly elected government in Brazil in the last 48 hours, and the uprising on January 6, 2 years ago here in the United States, and then the little circus that the Republicans put on in Congress with the 20 holdouts against electing a speaker, all actually are only made possible by one group in all of these diverse countries. And these groups are actually very similar. So some may call themselves Orthodox Jews, some call themselves Christian nationalists, some call themselves Hindu nationalists, some call themselves whatever you want. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's an Iranian mullah or a Saudi prince or an American politician on the far right in Congress that is an extremist and literally a bomb thrower, succeeding the people who stormed the Capitol, and now they get elected and they come in and do the same sort of disruptive actions now from the inside. The thread that binds all these people together is that without their activism, their authoritarianism in the name of God, they would not get anywhere. What they do is they cynically cash in on believers in each of their various religions who, ironically, may all hate each other in terms of Islam versus Judaism or Christianity, various iterations, fundamentalist, Calvinist, evangelical versus Roman Catholic. But the fact is, these are all one and the same person, if you like. And that is, it's an idea that somehow authentic political causes are rooted in either biblical or Quranic or other religious absolutes, giving them an authority to overthrow elected regimes and usurp democratically elected power in the name of a, quote, higher authority. And that would be for white Christians, the Bible or the Quran or whatever it may be. But the thread that runs through it all is this, and that is that we are either going to have a world that is dominated by secular, science-based, democratic principles of the kind the United States was founded on by the humanists and the secularists following people like Jefferson, who came out of the French Enlightenment background and the Italian Renaissance before that, and the idea of reason going all the way back into the democratic politics of ancient Greece, or we are going to be plunged back into an age of superstition and murder and mayhem and wars of religion of exactly the kind that Vladimir Putin is now fighting against Ukraine in the name of the Russian Orthodox Church, trying to crush Ukraine's Orthodox in the name of one pure religion over another, or in exactly the same way that white evangelical nationalist Christians here in this country are trying to crush the gay movement or the women's movement in the name of a higher authority that they subscribe to. So it just seems interesting to me, and I'll conclude with this, that you can't really understand the uprising in Brazil and the trashing of their capital if you don't tie it to what we did here in the States. And it's no coincidence at all that the backbone of both groups of people that were trashing their capitals were evangelical or nationalistic, white, conservative Roman Catholics. Same in both countries. And these two movements are linked. And so maybe it's not a coincidence that Bolsonaro has fled to Florida, of all states, run by DeSantis and that houses Donald Trump, and a state that, as DeSantis puts it, where woke goes to die, in exactly the language that Bolsonaro was using in Brazil, Trump was using here in this country, and all the rotten eggs in one basket this afternoon right there in Florida. My name is Frank Schaeffer.